Yeah, so this is back in Japan in January, earlier on in 2018. And I was top seed in this tournament a couple of years before on this surface, in this bowling centre, and it's a really beaten up, well, it's actually wood, but it's not really beaten up actually. It's not, you know, there isn't any such thing as a brand new wooden surface anymore, but considering what year this was all installed, it wasn't too bad really. Your ball doesn't get tracked up too much, and there's plenty of oil on the lane, so I could use a pretty big ball. Yeah, but a couple of years before, I led by a lot. I'm not sure how many pins it was, and Leto beat me. So this one I led, but it was only a few pins. And if I remember going into the position round, at the end of that game, I think Kyle Troup had a chance to be top seed, and luckily for me, he didn't do it. So the left lane hooked about 7 or 8 boards more. Hadn't thrown the Paradox Black all week actually either. They're quite a bit tighter on this pair. Kind of in the front part to the middle part of the lane, so the ball push a long way. Most of the time of this week I was using a Rebel Yell, not really giving away the pocket too much. We were bowling on the Dragon pattern, which was 45 feet, and it had a lot of volume. And you can see Kyle was playing a lot straighter than what I was trying to, but a lot more end over end as well. Even with his 2 hands, I could out hook him. I don't think that happens too much nowadays. I grew up on wood as well. I grew up on back in England. We have a lot of wooden bowling centres, and the bowling centre I grew up in has 9 lanes. It was on a pier that goes out to the English Channel, which is a little sea. And what we used to say, so I started bowling when I was 12, so I'm 33 now, so right around 1997 is when I started, so fairly late, but I started on this pier that has 9 lanes, 8 lanes were used for league, and it really was a throwback where we had the lanes were cleaned once a week, cleaned once a week with a big green machine. Can't remember what the name of that machine was, don't know, but we just called it the green machine, and that was on a Friday. And then we had the Century 100, which would oil the lanes, and they would just drag them back every time that they oiled the lanes on a weeknight, whenever they had league or whatever it might have been. And so it was very tight all the time as the week went on, and then they would get this big green machine out to clean the lanes and take all the oil off again once a week, and then there would be loads of back end. So that's kind of what I grew up on. And Stu Williams came over and played league one night. On a Friday night league, we had a 4-man team league, 32 bowlers, and Stu bowled, and there was, I think he was bowling on 1 and 2, and lane 1 had this big cliff where the foundation of bowling lanes, there was nothing there, so you can't really move left either, and there was a board on the approach that kept sticking up. Every time you let go, I think it was actually right around at the end of the approach on the foul line, you'd let go of the ball and it would pop up, and then you'd have to bend over and put the board back in, so no one tripped on it. But sure enough, I think actually that same night, was there with a friend, Rob Kendall from Australia now. He lives in Australia. Grew up bowling competition with him. He was there as well, and we were having a couple of drinks watching Stu bowl league. He bowled for me, and one frame Stu fell over, right on his backside, and we could not help but just stand up and laugh, and the rest of the bowl sort of cheered, and yeah, that was a good night for us. But yeah, it's those sort of memories of, and there's a different smell in a wooden bowling centre as well when they've just oiled the lanes. It's completely different, and all of those sort of memories of my childhood, of bowling every day after school in this bowling centre that had the Century 100 oil machine, had above ground ball returns until 2002, and manual scoring as well. So I grew up in that environment, which is, you know, closer to probably bowling in the 70s and 80s than it is, you know, the late 90s. But all of that sort of just worked out for me in this tournament in this bowling centre. There's that right lane being a little bit tighter that Kyle's just found out there, I think, even though he bowled on that lane already. But I did get, as a top seed, you do get a lot of shots of practice, so it's not always that easy to move on from there and strike a lot, but you should have a good idea after all the practice we get what the lanes are doing, if one lane hooks more than the other.
Spot on that too.
The big afro. It's massive, isn't it? You could probably actually say that the show was back in the 70s and people would believe you. Just looking at Kyle's outfit, his hair, we're bowling on wood.
After 1 year absence in Osaka in 2017, the return to Tokyo.
So we were only there in Japan for about 4 days. We arrived and then we had official practice the next day, and then the following day we had our qualifying, followed by the round robin. So it was a really quick in and out event that we had, and everyone was jet lagged, and I think I'm a bit more used to being jet lagged than some of the others. Another reason why it probably helped me. We bowled all day to get to this point as well. This is, I guess, a fourth or maybe it was a fifth day of bowling, but this was in the evening, I think right around 7 o'clock in the night, and we were bowling at 9 o'clock that morning, so a really long day with jet lag and bowling lots of games. The guy in the background yawning there, as you can see, just proves my point. And yeah, just you don't really feel it at this point now. I think when you get to any step ladder or the last few games of a day, when you're in contention to making cuts or winning a title, you don't really feel any of that.
Psychologically, to keep yourself in the moment.
There's another deep breath. I think someone put a little video together on YouTube a little while ago about all my deep breaths whenever I bowl well. So luckily for me, I was bowling well, and probably comes from the breathing. So I'm sliding right around 22 there. On the right lane, it's a little tighter.
Good shot there by Barrett.
And the break point here is, you can see how much earlier that ball was reading though. It's not really getting down the lane a long way. I'm using a lot of the mid lane read. Right around the 8 board, which is quite far to the right for 45 foot. And there is a story about that trophy. Jeff's here, Jeff Goodyear's here recording this and laughing a little bit. And so after I did win, we had a lot of press, and it took a good two hours, I think, by the time I finished, to the time we actually got to leave the bowling centre from the international press and some of the PBA, some of the JPBA. And it just went on. And by that time, all the other guys had left, all the other bowlers had left. They went on the bus, and it was still another hour or so. And so we kind of finished there and finally sat down, had a beverage, and took a deep breath. And then we left. So the only way for us to get back was on the underground railway that they have in Tokyo. So it was about halfway through there. I was actually with Kirk von Kruger, and where's your trophy? Ah, good point. I've got no idea. It must be in the bowl. So the extra frame guys then were still finishing up what they were doing, Jeff and Phil, and they came to the rescue, marching around Tokyo with a trophy looking for me. They just about made it, the last call in the bar. They were chucking us out, and we said, not yet, we can't leave. We need at least 2 more. I said, no, you've got to go. I said, no, we can't. There's a trophy coming. Pour 2 of your finest beers, please. And then the next day, it flew back to England.
At the end of the day, I think he feels pretty okay with just getting that 2-pin, because the 2-pin.
Yeah, there we go. You can see that lane's a little tighter. I think this might have been, I'm not sure if it was Kyle or Anthony Simonson were saying that this show was the first time, this event was the first time they bowled on wood ever. I think that's true. I know one of them said it, maybe they were just pulling my leg, but it makes for a good story. Yeah, so we're just sitting down saying, come on Kyle, hurry up. We've got a bar that's going to close in a couple of hours. That's the thing, when you do, you're only there for a few days. You don't really get to go out and do anything, you don't get to really relax, so it's full-on competition from the very moment you get off the plane. And people say to you, how do you enjoy Tokyo? Well, you get off the plane, I don't sleep too well on planes anyway, and we had a from London, it's almost 12 hours, and they kind of go from Heathrow over the North Pole a little bit to get to Tokyo. So 12 hours, roughly a 7, 8, 9 hour time difference. Land in the morning, which is the worst thing in the world because that means you've got the whole day until you can get to go to bed, and then the hotel doesn't let you check in until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you land at like 9 o'clock in the morning, or you get out of the airport about 9 o'clock in the morning, at the hotel for 10 in the morning. All you want to do is lay down and have a couple of hours sleep, and they say you can't check in. So had to deal with that, and then we got through all of that obviously, and spent the rest of that day really just fighting sleep. And then the next day we had official practice and opening ceremony, followed by the tournament starting that same afternoon. So people say to me, you get to travel all around the world, it's really cool, and it is really cool, and I love my job, and I love being able to compete in every different culture and in every country, being part of the PBA. But yeah, luckily enough, I'm not that touristy, because if I was, I don't think I'd ever be able to bowl. There isn't any time.
No doubt there. Absolutely no doubt that shot was going to strike.
One of the best games I've ever bowled in the title match. There's no doubt about that. This one felt very comfortable. Had the near the right lane was a lot tighter than the left lane. And I had the blower 710 where the messenger got out the 10 pin in the second frame and spared the 7 pin, and then just settled down. And obviously when you see your opponent, and you don't really bowl against your opponent or anything like this, but definitely when they do miss and they are struggling, leaving 2 pins, and then they big 4 in the other lane, it does make you settle a little bit more and really try and get this game over and done with as soon as you can. You don't really think that way, but definitely whenever they miss, I try to make sure I don't, not in a negative way, but get up there and really take control.
And you mentioned working every part of the lane. When you bowlers are moving from pair to pair here at Tokyo Port Bowl, there weren't too many boards that were left untouched all week long with trying to find the shot.
There we go, yeah. Not much I can really say about most of these shots. Don't know if I'm really moving too much, obviously, in this game. You kind of, any title match, I think when you're top seed, you kind of pick your strategy, try and work it out, try and give yourself a couple of options in practice if you need to. And then you pick one, and unless it's going very bad, you kind of stick with it. You see what the scoring pace is, see how your opponent's doing, see how you're doing. And that's really all that happened. And obviously it worked out very well. And Kyle had just won the USA team trials earlier that month as well, so he's obviously bowling very well.
It's mandatory strike mode the rest of the way out for Kyle Troup.
He went on to win in Sweden, so proving that he's a very good traveller as well. Although he did chop off most of that afro.
It may not necessarily be moving the feet to the left. It might be.
But hair grows back for most people, not for me.
Looks a little firmer. That looked a little firmer.
Very good shot. Feels like that's the way most of the players have been.
So this time you're thinking, well, I'm thinking, Kyle can strike out with 235. I'm on 230 pace. Like another double. Never think it seals it, but yeah, you just. I suppose now you're thinking about not to make any mistakes rather than being really aggressive. Obviously you're naturally aggressive and you want to strike, but when you get ahead like I am here, but Kyle's had a double now, he sits down, you got to think that he's going to strike out with 235, so I need 236 to win, and I already know that here. And yeah, you can't think let's not make a mistake, but at the same time, don't make a mistake. It's and you kind of get rid of those thoughts and go and make a good shot.
And looking to keep the drought between wins very short, less than a year if he takes home the title here at Tokyo Port Bowl.
This is a big shot.
There is not.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable.
Every ball going through the pin deck for every strike.
And then I have a little bit more easier sort of glide through the front on that lane. I don't have to worry. Not so much about if I miss left, but I know I can get the ball just up the lane very easily.
I believe. And
The left lane's a little different. Left lane, I had to push the ball through the middle part of the lane a little bit more.
but if he spares twice, yeah, he's gonna be, as long as he doesn't lose too much count, 2 spares is enough.
So I guess I'm thinking here, you know, this is a strike that wins me the event.
One spare
Strike
for
here,
Troup
then
would
it's
get- and like
it doesn't matter what
spare
happens.
9 would be
Yeah,
enough
he's gonna
because
be in
Troup
the
lost that
two-
count on the big split.
Yeah, so Dominic's gonna be in the 230s if he goes.
It's a big thing I do with my breathing as well, is I like to
And
get my heart rate back down to
235.
something that feels comfortable. Not so much, it's very difficult to control, but
There it is.
with breathing, it'll, that's how I settle myself the most and allow myself to get up there and
4
think of
different
it
players,
as
4 years
another
in the
shot.
DHC Japan Invitational.
Very impressive from Dominic.
And that one was just about,
Um,
it was about perfect.
to be able to come in as the #1 seed after those high rev rate players and the lanes. I'm pretty sure.
Always nice
Dominic
when you get
might
to
be
that
a little scared of
title match and it all sort of goes well, and then you don't have to, you get it over and done with after like the 8th night frame. But they certainly aren't all like that.
Especially if he's
don't
got a,
really know.
they're blowing the pattern.
I've certainly been on the other side where someone else has done that to me a few times, so it's nice to be on the good side of that for a change. Well, not for a change, you know, I'm not going to sit here and complain that I don't get my fair share, but you have to put yourself in position and
Chose
and
to
hope that sometimes it works out for you and sometimes it won't, but keep putting yourself there, sometimes it will, and this is one where it did, luckily for me.
yeah, that's sharp.
And that guy's got a cold in the background.
To execute those shots as well as
Gave
he
it to his
did,
wife, I think.
That's really impressive.
It was January, it was pretty cold there,
Yeah. Also,
but we didn't have
so
snow this
so
year
far
like we did 2 years
Kyle
before when we were there, so, or a
very
year before.
And as you say, you've been on to a very good last couple of months. And
It's going to give you a little confidence
yeah,
going,
I mean,
into,
100%.
going into Rotterdam.
So you kind of feel for Kyle a little bit here. He's bowled so well all month, and this tournament, he left the washout against me in the position round in the 10th frame that allowed me to be top seed. And then you know, he didn't bowl his best game here, but
when he gets home,
he's already proven that he'll be back, and he's taken it on the chin and gone on to win in Sweden and had a very, very successful year.
But taking home the big prize, 5 million yen, $50,000 approximately. Didn't check my exchange
So even
rate
watching this
before
now,
we
I can
started,
smell
but
the wooden
it's
lanes
Sunday.
in that bowling centre.
A great payday.
And it's
Kyle
completely
Troup
different than
taking
anything
home
else, but
2,500,000
yeah, I'm looking forward to going back there in April.
And Don Barrett is going to be your champion. Jesper, thanks for sitting in with us again during the stepladder finals.
And there we go.
And we will have the trophy presentation to Don Barrett along with the winner's check very
And I'm
shortly.
just rushing, trying to get myself
There he
into
is,
the
your champion of
doing my media.
2018
Can't wait to do.
DHC Japan Invitational. Don Barrett.
It's not too bad, really. No. So the first thing you want to do after a win is sort of call home, let them know how you done, let them know the good news, that the sacrifice that I make for being away from them and they make for allowing me to travel and do this, and let them know sort of this was one of the weeks that it worked out really well. And it does take a while for that phone call sometimes. You get kind of grabbed straight away. It might be a speech or two, and then straight away you're in press and everything else. So I'm not quite sure when I did get to call Cassie about this one. I know I sent her a message straight away, and it would have been just a few hours earlier, so it would have been in the afternoon for her. But yeah, that's kind of what you're thinking about straight away, and just let everybody at home know that it went really well, and you know, it's one of those weeks where it was all worthwhile.